Up to this point in this unit, we've been looking at the connections between these three things. We started off by talking about a fraction into a decimal. Without looking at your notes, who can tell me how to do that? Fraction into a decimal. Jory.
Divide the numerator by denominator.
Perfect. Just take the numerator and divide by the denominator. That's what a fraction is. That's what it is. It's just a division that's not nice to divide. Sometimes it can be nice, sometimes it can be very nasty. But that's all it is. It's a division that hasn't been fulfilled yet. And when we do that division, I end up with this decimal because fractions are parts of wholes, and that's what decimals are. And that's what percents are. That's what all these three things are. We talked about going from decimal to percent. How do I get from decimal to percent? Somebody other than Jory this time. Aaron.
Times by 100%.
Beautiful. I take the decimal, I just multiply it by 100%. And now I'm in a percent form. If I wanted to go from percent to decimal, what do I have to do? Lane.
You divide by 100%.
Perfect. I divide by the 100%. This gets rid of the percent and turns it into a decimal. These are real numbers. This and this are real numbers. This is a way of visualizing a real number in terms of 100s, right? 100s is a whole, then a percent is a piece of 100. Okay, then we talked about, so the last piece that I have on the recording is this piece right here, going from decimals to fractions. 3-step process. Does anybody remember? Step 1, put the decimal over 1. It's super easy. You just put the decimal over 1. But now I have a decimal over 1. So it's kind of a fraction, but still kind of a decimal. How do I deal with that now? Leah.
You have to multiply by 10 until the decimal is gone.
You're going to multiply the numerator and the denominator until that decimal is gone. Until they're both whole numbers on the numerator and the denominator. That's a proper fraction. Now I say proper as in the right kind of fraction, not that improper versus proper. But you're going to multiply by 10 the numerator and the denominator until the decimal is gone. Step 3. Yes? Reduce. It should always be a step, right? You should always be looking to reduce. And when we discuss the test, you're going to see that some people had some really, really big numbers on some of those questions, when really, if you just kind of cleaned up as you went, the numbers were easy to deal with. But they get really bloated if you're not reflecting and going, well, 15 over 20 is 3 over 4. Okay, little things that we need to be able to help make our lives easier by cleaning as we go. Okay, so the last thing that we had talked about with this is going from fractions to percent and back and forth. So fraction to percent, there's two main ways of doing this. Two main ways. What's one way and the default way and it'll always work way? Preston.
Put the denominator to multiply whatever the denominator is and put it to 100.
Can I put that over here for number 2? Because it is actually by definition, that's exactly what's happening. If you make the denominator 100, then the numerator is the piece of that 100. Perfect. That doesn't always work though. It's not always nice and clean. Give me 1 second and I will call on you. The numerator then is the percent of the whole. Okay, when we start solving problems, we're actually going to be using that little trick to help us through some of these problems. This will reflect again, it'll come back, and I won't say to haunt us, but for some people, math is scary. But it'll come back to us when we do ratios. Okay? Ratios are super neat little things, and we're actually going to be using ratios in the percents unit without even you knowing it, which now you know. What about this one, Leah? What would be the default go-to for turning it into a fraction into a percent?
Turn it into a decimal, please.
Yeah. All I have to do is go from fraction to decimal. We already have a path. So what? It's 2 steps. They're 2 very easy steps. Take the numerator divided by the denominator, turns it into a decimal. Then I take my decimal and I 100. Thank you. Remember, we're changing what that thing is. I can't willy-nilly just go multiplying by 100. I'm changing what I'm looking at when I change it to a percent. Good. So we did some examples of that. You have some examples of that in class, in your notes. We looked at marks. Marks out of a pieces of marks out of a total amount of marks. What's your percentage of that marks on the test? And then we can convert those into percents. The other trick was when we were going from percents to fractions. Going from a percent to a fraction, there's, again, two ways of doing that. I'll put 1 and I'll put 2. There's a long, painful process, and then there's a short, quick, little, easy way of doing it, which also creates a little bit more complication. Which one are you going to give me, the long process or the quick, short, easy one?
So, like, you put the percent over 100.
Good. I'm going to put that as our quick, easy, even if it's a decimal percent, I could put it over 100, and I'll be done changing it into a fraction. I should probably multiply by 10 in the numerator into the denominator until those decimals are gone. So, first way is put the percent over 100. That's like dividing it by 100, which turns it into a decimal. But it's already in fraction form, but it's a messy fraction form. So after you put it over 100, we should multiply by 10 like we did before. Multiply by 10 in the numerator and denominator until that decimal's gone. I'm just recapping what we talked about last week. Yes? Do we remember this? Okay, multiply by 10 until decimal is gone, and then you might have a big but definite fraction, and then your last step should always be to check if you can. Bingo. Good. Clean it up. Reduce if you can. Don't leave a fraction as 25 over 100. Reduce it to 1 over 4. Okay? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. On the test, I said that I'd have nice, easy fractions on there, and sometimes they didn't turn out to be really nice and easy. But if I saw the numbers and I saw the logic, then you got full credit for that. Okay? What about the quick, easy way of... Actually, this is the quick, easy way, and it's not that easy. But the other way of looking at it is, if I were to turn it into a decimal, then put it over 1. So now I'm doing the backwards. I'm going to decimal and then back up to percent. Okay? This one's a little bit longer, and when you get to this stuff, going from decimal to percent, things get a little bit nasty and hairy sometimes. But you're going to notice you're going to encounter that here anyway. No matter what, chances are your fraction's not going to turn out to be particularly nice. Grade 8, we try and keep things as clean as possible so you don't have, again, 29 over 47. Those are just weird, nasty fractions. So you put it over 1, you multiply by 10. Notice we're doing this step right here. In the numerator and the denominator until your decimal is gone. And we will see decimal percents. We talked about those last day. Okay. Until the decimal is gone, and then reduce if you can. There you go. Thank you. Reduce, and you'll have a fraction in the end. Okay? You'll have a clean fraction. Nice.
Yay.
Can we stop the clickety-clackety? It's annoying me, and I'm like 3 rows ahead of you. Thank you. Okay. Then we moved into basic percentages. I'm going to actually save that for another video.